Tesla just bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin and announced that they'll be accepting that as a form of payment in the near future. I'm Jacob from Buzz Trades, and in this video, we're going to be discussing the details of that announcement. All right, so we'll go ahead and start here with the actual filing itself, the announcement, and then we'll go over some of the details and dive a little deeper into it. So if you want to find this on your own, you can go to the investor relations page on Tesla's website, come down here to SEC filings, and this was filed February 8th, 2021, which was, of course, today. We'll click on the 10K here, which is the annual report, and then scroll down. What we're looking for is on page 23 of this filing. So scroll down here to page 23. Sorry if you get motion sickness. Page 23. So go ahead and zoom in here and read this together, this top paragraph. In January 2021, we updated our investment policy to provide us with more flexibility to further diversify and maximize returns on our cash that is not required to maintain adequate operating liquidity. As a part of the policy, which was duly approved by the audit committee of our board of directors, we may invest a portion of such cash in certain alternative reserve assets, including digital assets, gold bullion, gold exchange traded funds, and other assets as specified in the future. Thereafter, we invested an aggregate of $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. $1.5 billion in Bitcoin under this policy and may acquire and hold digital assets from time to time or long term. Moreover, we expect to begin accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment for our products in the near future, subject to applicable laws and initially on a limited basis, which we may or may not liquidate upon receipt. So a couple of interesting things here. Of course, first of all, the fact that they bought $1.5 billion in Bitcoin. That is huge, huge news. Secondly, the fact that they will be accepting Bitcoin as a form of payment for products in the near future. Man, that is massive news for Tesla on so many levels. If they're able to move cash, from their balance sheet to Bitcoin, over time, we've seen that cash depreciates in value due to inflation, whereas Bitcoin has increased in value. Going back to our previous video, I'll throw a card up here, talking about there's a max supply of Bitcoin. There's only a limited amount of Bitcoin, so the more it gets bought up, the less there is, the higher the price goes. So this should be a great move for Tesla. And the fact that they're going to start taking it as a form of payment for products is huge. This has the potential to increase their margins substantially. For example, if someone were to buy a Tesla for $40,000, they pay, right now they'd be paying roughly with one Bitcoin. And then the price of Bitcoin in the future goes up to, say, $60,000. Then Tesla just makes that much more, that would be a 50% increase nearly on their car. So if they're able to produce the car for $20,000, they sell it for $40,000, and then they're actually able to have a Bitcoin, the payment in Bitcoin that is now worth $60,000, they just greatly increase their margins. So that is a huge potential upside for them accepting payment in Bitcoin. Also in here it says we may or may not liquidate upon receipt. So just because you pay Tesla with Bitcoin, that doesn't mean that it is automatically converted back to cash. They are within their rights able to hold that as Bitcoin. So in theory, as they bought $1.5 billion worth of Bitcoin. If they never bought more and they just accepted Bitcoin as a form of payment, they could continue to increase their position in Bitcoin through accepting it as payment for products. So really, really smart move by Tesla. I'm very curious to see how this ends up playing out for them. And the fact that they are not required to liquidate that upon receipt, that is fantastic news. So they can continue to grow their position in Bitcoin. And this is interesting because this comes roughly 2 weeks after Elon Musk put in his Twitter bio #Bitcoin. So I'm very curious to see. We don't get all of the details here as far as the purchase price and the purchase date. I would be very, very curious to see when that was. If we flip over here to the Bitcoin chart really quick and go to like a 1 month chart. We'll go to 3 month chart. 2 weeks ago was, roughly in this area. And it's very interesting because this is about the time where Elon put that in his Twitter bio #Bitcoin. So I'm curious if this was the area in which Tesla was buying its Bitcoin. And then we got the official announcement today. So it'll be interesting to see what their average price is on that purchase of Bitcoin. One more thing here on the SEC filing, and I believe it's this paragraph right here. I will go ahead and paraphrase this. Essentially, what this paragraph is saying, if the price of Bitcoin decreases, Tesla is able to count that as a loss. They're able to deduct that from their earnings and count that as a loss. Whereas if the price were to increase, any market price increases, they are not required to count that as a gain, which is fantastic. You know, they're able to count when the price goes down, they can count that as a loss, but when the price goes up, until they sell, they are not required to count that as a gain. Once they sell, of course, they'll have to count that as a gain, pay the taxes and so forth. But until they sell, they're not required to count those gains, which is fantastic. So then we flip over here and we see today, you know, that was obviously fantastic for the price of Bitcoin. We get the announcement today and we see, you know, a $5,500 move in the price of Bitcoin. And, you know, we've got a little sell-off since, but the high up here was, it looks like we tapped 45,000 briefly, and then we've sold off a little bit since. If we go ahead and look at the price of Tesla, let's just go to a 1 week chart. We closed on Friday around 850. Big gap up this morning on the news. The news came out around 4:30 a.m. Big gap up on the news, roughly a 20-point gap. And then we have gotten a little sell-off since, the same as we saw a little sell-off here with Bitcoin. But huge news for Tesla, huge news for Bitcoin. I'm very curious to see what happens in the future. Thank you for watching this video. I'm Jacob from Buzz Trades, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.